Now, moving on to a different survey. Nielsen Philippines research shows Filipinos' love for television continues. Indeed, it persists. But it also appears we're also embracing other kinds of media, digital media, and simultaneously. To explain how our viewing habits are evolving, we're joined in the Rockwell studio by Nielsen Philippines Managing Director Stuart Jamieson. Stuart, good to have you back on the program. Another interesting survey that you've released, another interesting report you've released. Help me understand this. So TV viewership in the Philippines is still very high. It's still very strong, one of the highest in the region. This despite the increase in viewership on digital devices, which apparently viewership is happening at the same time, simultaneously. Help me understand that. I'm watching and I'm on my iPad and my phone at the same time.
Okay, yeah, that's correct. Let's take a step back and the first thing is TV is very healthy in the Philippines.
That's good to hear for those of us who work in TV.
Exactly.
I still have a job.
Yep,
Okay.
you certainly do. We're not seeing any decline, unlike other markets around the region where we're seeing the penetration of digital devices and watching video content on digital devices is having a small impact on TV. Here in the Philippines, we've tracked TV for a number of years and we're seeing very constant levels.
Is there a reason for that?
I think Filipinos just love their television,
okay.
And you know what we're seeing is the introduction of digital devices, particularly mobile devices, is incremental into the viewing behaviour. And so what we're seeing is really two different outcomes. The first one being is if I can't get to my television when you put your program to air, I now have the ability to watch it at a later date using the broadcaster services or third-party services who will stream that content at a later date. That allows me to catch up with my television. But secondly, as you earlier mentioned, we're seeing this phenomenon of multi-screens at the same time.
At the same time.
At the same time. So I'm sitting in my living room watching my TV with my family, and also on my lap I have an iPad or a mobile device, and I'm either Facebooking or Twittering about the television program that I'm watching with my friends.
Well, that's not surprising. My own kids do that right
Yeah.
right in front of me. But what does it say about viewers today?
So I think what we're seeing with viewers is they're becoming or wanting more control over their viewership.
Okay.
So they want to view when it suits them. Hence the launch of these over-the-top services that provide streaming content at a later time. And that's saying to the industry, we love your content, but sometimes we just can't make it to what we used to call appointment viewing, and now we're going to make our own time. And that's great because I don't miss out on the content. The other phenomenon of using the digital device at the same time is we look at that as being, if they're talking about the television program to their friends and their family via a Twitter or a Facebook or any other social media device, we see that as a highly engaged viewer because they're watching the program but they're also talking about it. And that's got to be good because as we know about social media, that just goes out to a much wider audience. And
what would be the implication on TV programming or for TV programmers in terms of producing content? Is there content specific for the TV screen, which is, of course, fixed in a particular physical space, and a different version of content for mobile devices, or is it really just interchangeable?
I think at this point in time, we're seeing most of it's interchangeable.
Okay.
We're seeing that the mobile device is either used as a convenience factor. I can't get to my television, so mobile device is convenient. We are seeing a trend across the globe of programming made for digital devices. It's not screening on broadcast.
Okay.
And so we're now seeing some programs. We're seeing content providers like Amazon produce content.
But they're not choosing one over the other, right? It's just whatever is available and whatever they fancy at that moment.
Yeah, in some instances we are seeing programming start off purely based on the digital, but then growing into a television audience. But yeah, I think it's more the convenience factor. So it comes back to produce good content and make it available on any platform, and you will find viewers.
Let me go back to that point because it impacts on our industry in a very profound way. Is there TV viewing that is specific for TV sets, and TV viewing that's specific for mobile devices in terms of time of day, in terms of the quality, the kind of content, and of course that also includes the place where you are?
Yeah, I think what you see tends to be dominated by television viewing is sport. Small screen, very hard to follow the basketball or anything like that on a small screen, and people want to watch that in a big environment. I think,
and in a communal environment,
and in a communal environment, and also live.
Yeah.
We don't see a lot of catch up on sport because the results are already known. But telenovelas, for example, are very watched in a communal space. But if I can't get there, it makes perfect sense to then go and stream that at a later date so I don't miss out on the story. And one of the things that we've found over the years is with the growth of social media, you don't have a lot of time to catch up before someone posts something in a social media environment and therefore blows the story. So there's no spoiler alerts in social media. So we tend to see when we start to look at, particularly overseas, because we just don't have the data in the Philippines at this point in time, most of the streaming is done within the first 24 to 48 hours of the program going to air.
Let me ask you, is TV viewership changing also in terms of it being more individualized, meaning you're watching these programs or content alone? It used to be, of course, when growing up, you only had one TV set in the house. I mean, TV viewership was a communal experience.
Yeah.
Are we seeing that changing as well?
Yeah,
or is it a combination of both?
No, I think we are seeing it slightly change. I think what we're seeing is there are certain programs that everyone will gather around the TV and it'll be a communal.
Sports being one
of them.
A Manny
Pacquiao fight, a conference-ending
soap opera.
Basketball, or the favourite soap opera. But then you've got lots of different people in the household. You've got young kids who may be wanting to watch some other program and they will move to their mobile devices in isolation of the rest of the family and consume that content. So I think we're starting to see that behaviour, but I think it's also, it's not at the expense of the communal viewing. It's just certain different programs that are targeted for different audiences that may not be a communal audience.
Now, these trends that you discuss, are these cut across classes, or is it stronger in one particular socioeconomic class than the other?
No, we're seeing this pretty much broad stream right across all the different social classes. I think what we're seeing in the Philippines is the affordability of mobile devices, the affordability of data plans is allowing people to become more connected, and that's just driving this behaviour. And then we're seeing content providers provide more content. So over the last couple of years, we're seeing a lot more local content move into streaming environment, and that's what really drives the engagement from a local audience.
I was talking about the implications on TV programming, which is our job.
Yep.
But what about the implications for advertisers and for advertising agencies? I guess, given this new environment, this new landscape, the strategy would be getting your viewers at the right place, at the right time, on the right device.
Correct.
Right? I mean, so walk us through some of the, tips and insights for advertisers to take note of.
Yep. So what we at Nielsen call that is total audience, and what we really need to start to focus on from an advertiser's perspective is that TV is still going to be a mass reach. It's still going to be able to give me a fairly good reach, but I need to supplement that reach for some of the reasons that we spoke about earlier, people moving into isolated locations to watch their programming, or to be more targeted. And so therefore, as a result, we're now starting to see advertisers and media agencies look at spreading their advertising across the mainstream of television and then supplementing that advertising into a digital environment, whether it be pre-roll or during the program. And we're now starting to see advertising made specifically for the digital environment. It's not necessarily you can take a very big production of a television ad and just put it into a digital environment. It may be too long, it may be not suited to a smaller screen. So we're starting to see that implication on the creative space as well.
So that, of course, is something that advertisers should take note of. But so do political campaign strategists, right? I mean, the implications on, we're in the middle of an election season, we're seeing ad spend. Your company has released that report. A more thorough report will be out soon, I understand, with the PCIJ. But Stuart, tell us about, if I were a campaign strategist, where would I put my money if I wanted to reach my target audience?
Okay, if I look at the Philippines, 36% of the population are millennials. Millennials are going to have a large voice in the current campaign. We know millennials are the generation that has really adopted the digital space more than others. So I would be, if I was a campaign manager, I would be ensuring that a good percentage of my electoral spend is spent in a digital environment targeted at those millennials who are going to shape the future of the country and have a big say. But I wouldn't turn my back on television at the same time. We know millennials love their television, but but I don't think just focusing on TV would be a smart campaign, and we've seen that in other elections around the world, where people who have been elected into their top positions have been very smart at using social media, using digital as a way of getting their messages very targeted to a targeted audience.
So it requires a very sophisticated strategy, getting them at the right time, right place, on the right device or right platform. But did the study cover print and radio? What's happening on that space?
So this study was purely focused on television.
Okay.
We do know
what do you know about print readership and of course radio listening?
So we do know that radio in the Philippines is quite healthy. Particularly when we compare it to other markets around the region, radio has been very sustainable in the Philippines. Their listenership hasn't changed a great deal. We do know that in the print environment there are certain pockets that are doing extraordinarily well,
such as
provincial newspapers. The internet really doesn't target quite nicely if I live in a small province, whereas my local newspaper will give me what's my local candidate doing if we're talking elections, or what's happening in my local market, which gets a little bit lost in the internet. Internet's very good on a national or global level. Magazines are still doing reasonably well because they're very targeted to a targeted audience. So, we are seeing a little bit of a change in the dynamics. Certainly print is the medium that is being sort of hit the hardest, but not right across print. So I would never say that print is dead or dying. I just say that it's rebirthing itself into more a digital offer as well. If you look at most of the major national newspapers, they've got a very strong digital platform.
All right, just a final question for you, Stuart. We're used to TV ratings to measure the success of programming or the success of advertising, right? But now that we have a very complex landscape where people are not just working with different screens, not just 2 screens, 3 screens, maybe even 4 screens, if you include like outdoor advertising. They're also viewing this content simultaneously, which makes it even more complicated. How do you now measure this? I understand you have a total audience approach to viewership. I mean, how do you implement that, and how do you measure viewership, given this very complex environment?
Yeah, so it is a complex environment, and it's one of the biggest challenges as an audience measurement company. We've been doing this now in the US for quite some time. We're planning to roll that out into Southeast Asia over the 2016-2017. It's called total audience measurement, and basically we take our traditional television ratings, we then look at our digital ratings, and we measure the digital content or the digital advertising in exactly the same way as we measure television. One of the challenges for the industry has always been each medium has a different way of measuring, and you can't aggregate those measures to give a total audience. What we've done at Nielsen is take an approach where we measure television, and we've been doing that for many, many years. And as we start to measure the digital space, we measure it in exactly the same way as we measure television.
And this includes social media?
That's
difficult.
Doesn't include social media at this point in time. It will in the future.
It'll include streaming video?
It includes streaming video, it includes short form video, video on demand, video inserted into like Facebook and places like that. And what we're then able to do is bring that whole audience together to give a content provider or an advertiser, what is your total audience? And then we can break that audience down. What was your TV audience? What was your digital audience? What was duplicated? Who watched both platforms? It becomes very complex.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah. Tell us how we do on Mornings at ANC, okay? When this is in place. Stuart Jamieson, Nielsen Philippines Managing Director, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Up next, we'll talk to the Miss Intercontinental first runner-up. Her name, Christy or Gary. Catch that when Mornings at ANC comes back.